a lot of feedback loops from the universe showing me pieces on, there is a graceful way through what's coming. And some of us are already awake to what's coming, and a lot of people are not awake to what's coming. So this is more of a shock to the larger collective. Those of us that have been doing our personal work, we've been, we're living for this, right? This is why here is for the welcome. She wants to chime in and say that 2023 adds up to the year of seven. And that's exactly what I'm talking about with the great die-off that's coming. There's a massive die-off approaching us, and it's the die-off of those old Saturn structures that have been in play in our lives for generations upon generations upon generations. The big one, the war machine. The war machine, that's going to have its day in 2023. It's going to have its reckoning. And then the other Saturn structures are education. Our education system is also in its time of reckoning. Our health system in its time of reckoning. Okay, our energy systems, our, uh, pretty much those structures that are held together, um, our government, our bureaucracies, all this stuff that's held together with our life force energy. All of this is going to be having its reckoning in 2023. Now, what this looks like for you and me will be very unique to maybe what the larger whole is going to experience. Why? Is because we've been awake to the falling ways of these structures for quite some time, and many of us have been engineering our lives to be unplugged from these pieces. So for a lot of us, we're ahead of the game, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be challenges. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have uh, grieving go on over the death of these structures, and and not just of structures, but I'm also getting cues that there's also many levels of mass die off. Okay, many levels of a mass die off that we're coming into. And these are energies that I'm sensing, but it's also being reflected to us in the astrology. The star of the show in the coming 2023 is Pluto. Pluto, death and dying, transformation through death. But also Pluto is the god, the keeper, so to speak, of the underworlds. Okay. And this is what's been happening in the past few years, is that all that was hidden, dark and forgotten in the underworlds is coming to the surface. And this is quite literally the Pachacuti that the Q'ero elders have been talking about for all these decades. Quite literally, that which was underground and hidden is now in the light. Okay. This Pluto energy is bringing that final death to those constructs that are no longer in integrity with life. Okay. And those constructs are the bureaucracy stuff, the corporate stuff. All right. So we have, our obvious ones, the war machines, the governments, all the things I mentioned in the beginning. The structures that are holding those apparatuses up are in for a great whammy via Pluto, the Pluto energy. Okay. Yes, thank you, Pluto. Now, for those of us who have been going through Pluto transits, because it takes many years for Pluto to transit through a sign, right? Many years to transit through a particular angle of relationship to this planet. So for those of you who've gone through massive Pluto transformations in your particular celestial star map, your astrological configuration, the intensity of Pluto. It's one thing after another. It's like boom, boom. You have to say goodbye. It's like sticking your finger in that spiritual lightning socket, where you stick your finger in that spiritual lightning socket and your entire life falls apart. All the things that you thought were solid, all the things that you thought you could rely on, all the things that gave you comfort just fall away in a very unceremonial way, very painful way. So not only are you having to find new ground to settle upon, there's a grieving process that happens with the loss of these structures that gave us at one point in time an identity maybe that we cherished, or a foundation that we really relied upon, or a sense of security that we used, all that stuff falls away and requires a grieving process. Now, the reason why it requires a grieving process is this is part of the sickness of the Western society of humanity. Okay. It is possible to accept things so completely where the grieving happens like a river flows and there's no navigation required. But most humans in the Western world, their ego driver is not related to their emotions in that way. And that is why we need a grieving process. We need to be aware that we're in a cycle, we're in a process. Okay. That is the lifeline for people who are heavily in their mental field, is recognizing that there is a process that they're in. And when they recognize that process, they can settle and allow themselves to have feelings, allow themselves to process their sadness, their denial, their grief, their anger, la, 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 big long list of stuff. I didn't mean to throw grief in there. Those are all things that happen in the process of grief. So for those of us who are able to really just flow with our emotions without those understandings, we have a bit of a leg up in that because we can let things flow through us very, very quickly. Now, the downside is that the people around us may not be able to handle that kind of intensity. So we need to evaluate who are the proper space keepers for us to be in that level of intensity within ourselves. Okay. I know that when I'm in my emotional space and I'm letting things flow, it's intense, and I'm okay being alone. Matter of fact, that's why I'm okay being alone, because I don't want to really impact people that don't know how to process what it is that I'm processing, right? But there are wonderful communities, and we have a community in the academy that's like this, where people will get together and hold space for each other while we release this stuff, while we go through this intense emotional purge. And if you can have that kind of thing set up for you, then you're going to be able to navigate this coming year very, very well. And it's not to say you're not going to have massive ups and downs. What I'm saying is that the depths of the valleys will not be as low, and the level of devastation will not be as heavy. Okay. And that's because we've been preparing for this for years and years and years. We've been preparing, we've been doing our personal work. And this year in 2023 is going to be the litmus test, is going to be the year of feedback loops, the landscape that shows you how effective your personal work up until now has been. Okay. If you're coming into 2003 and you're having that finger stuck in the spiritual lightning socket experience and your whole life is falling apart and you're completely devastated, well, now you know that the personal transformation work that you were doing was only hitting the surface. It wasn't getting into the deep stuff, right? And I'm not saying that to be like, haha, you're wrong. No, that's not at all what I mean. I mean that you need to understand this is a dialogue of the universe speaking to you. Now you know there was more depths that you are capable of that maybe you didn't reach. Okay. But for those of us who are going into the depths that we need to go to, grace and ease is absolutely a part of this process of the falling away. And the story I have is just something that I heard news of this morning, is a dear sister Starshine who is in the academy and does lots of deep work, lots of work. I mean, she's been pretty much, her and I have been, pretty much neck and neck in how in doing our personal work. It's a part of our lifestyle. It's not something that we visit when we get a problem. It is our life. It's our daily life. This is what we do. And what happened is that a neighbor's tree fell on an electrical pole that caught fire, that was coming up to her house. Now, she was having a full-on emotional response. The husband was going into fix-it mode. I mean, everybody, high alert, went into their thing. And if you think about this is like a foreshadowing of that 2023 constructs falling apart. And that's our energy system, right? This is our financial system. This is, all the structures that we've been living upon that are not in harmony with life. This is what I'm talking about. They're all going to end up having problems because of Pluto. And so she has this problem with the electricity catching, the whole thing catching fire. And then there's this big dynamic inside that it takes her to. She goes through the internal process of it all. And the worst that happened was that they are now out of electricity for the day. Okay. None of the kids were hurt. The house did not catch on fire, right? I mean, it was a big ado, right? Because it could have caught on fire. There's all sorts of things that could have happened. And on top of all that intensity on the external world happening, it brought her deeper into herself, into deeper layers of her personal issues that source that event into being so. Okay. So when we're able to address these intensities like that, that is how we allow for more grace and more ease. That is how we actually minimize the impact of something that could be really much, much worse. So, for example, instead of having the wall of cinder blocks pounded into your head, it's more of a smack of someone's hand. Way less intense. Still not pleasant, still not great, right? But because of all that inner work that's done, we don't need those cinder blocks to be dropped on our heads. It can be much more gentle. And those gentle things still take us to the depths that they need to take us to. You see what I mean? So this is the secret of navigating this chaos with grace and ease, is going as deep as you can in your personal work. So when the upheavals are in motion, you are in the right place at the right time, and it does not need to be take you through the depths of hell in order to touch these buried places inside of yourself. You're willing to go there with the breeze. You're willing to go there with the sight of an eagle. You're willing to go there with the sight of whatever. Okay. So this is what Pluto is doing this year. It's making people get to the depths that they need to get to in order, though, for the underworlds to get fully revealed. Okay. So I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. This process that we're in is not a sprint. It is a marathon. Okay. So pace yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves. Understand that all the feedback loops that are going on in your life are a part of who you are. This is something that is inside of you, showing you something that you need to see. It's important to show you. You know, animal running across the street is not just an animal running across the street. A friend going off on you and being really upset for A, B, and C reason is not just a friend who has issues. These are things that we are colluding with and creating in the universe, and it's being shown to us. And it's, don't look it on the surface. The surface is just the messenger. There's all these energies behind it. And by resolving, unwinding those energies behind it, that is how you're going to adjust the surface data set. Okay, that is how you're going to adjust that, how the feedback loop comes, the synchronicity that is shown to you. I hope this is making sense the way I'm saying it. I know it's a bit abstract the way what this is, but it's for star seeds. Well, for multidimensional, woke up to yourself. This is a very solid, practical thing that happens on every day of your life. But I'm just trying to put words to it to frame it up so the mind can actually have a relationship to what's happening, and you're not constantly in that state of taking that leap of faith. Though that is something that has to happen, right? That is part of this walk, is taking that leap of faith. The thing is that it's not a blind leap. It's a leap into trusting yourself. It's a leap into trusting what your heart is saying and what your heart's calling forward. You know what I mean? It's a leap in trusting the deep senses of knowing of your truth, like that.